Things are hotting up at Mobile World Congress.
While Aussie content owners are cooling on the idea of a 3 strikes piracy rule. Welcome to Vertical Hold, the tech show where we channel surf through the headlines in search of the big picture. I'm Adam Turner and I'm here with the man who gets great mileage in the city, Alex Kidman. Alex, what's new in tech?
Apple is back down on the Error 53 iPhone issue, issuing an updated version of iOS available via iTunes, but not over the air, that restores functionality to iPhones bricked by the security problem. Apple said in a statement that the error was designed to catch iPhones coming out of the factory with issues, and that it never should have affected end consumers at all. At the same time, the company is gearing up for a privacy fight with the US government, which has mandated that it has to provide a backdoor method for it to access an iPhone in a suspected terrorism case. Apple's Tim Cook has come out firing on all fronts, concerned about the wider implications of governments mandating access to what is basically private information.
The 3 strikes piracy rule, which Australian copyright holders fought so hard to introduce, is dead in the water, according to Village Roadshow chief Graham Burke. After months of negotiations, the movie studios and internet service providers can't agree on who will foot the bill for the process, and so the piracy warnings idea has been shelved.
JB Hi-Fi's music streaming service, JB Hi-Fi Now, is set to close on the 17th of March. If you've got credit with the service beyond the 17th, you'll be refunded, and if you've got gift cards for the service, you'll either be able to get refunds for them or use them as straight JB Hi-Fi gift cards.
With Australia's 3 strikes piracy rule shelved and the Dallas Buyers Club case in tatters, Australian content owners are finally taking advantage of the site blocking system introduced last year. Streaming search engine Solar Movie is first on their hit list, with high-profile BitTorrent search engines like the Pirate Bay and Kickass Torrents expected to follow. So, Alex, Apple's back down on Error 53 and claims it was all a big misunderstanding. What's going on there?
What's going on there is people threatened to sue Apple, and government started to look into whether or not what they were doing might have constituted criminal damage because, as we discussed last week, the issue around it meant that consumers were arguably unfairly having their phones completely bricked by this issue. To briefly recap, Error 53 is what happens if you've generally had either damage to or a third-party replacement of some of the elements around the home button on newer iPhones and upgraded to iOS 9. Do both, and the odds were quite good that your phone would actually lock itself down. And when I say lock itself down, that was quite complete. The latest version of iOS, which you can update via iTunes, fixes the issue, and Apple's issued a public apology, which is a fairly big backflip for the company, where it had initially just said, look, we told you that third-party parts would void your warranty.
I was going to say, now they're saying, this was never meant to leave the factory, but 2 weeks ago they said, suck it, that's just the way it works. So they were trying to tell us...
2 weeks is a long time in technology.
They were trying to tell us this was a security feature for our own protection, and now it's like, no, forget about that.
Yeah, look, I mean, I think the security angle is not a terrible one. I do still think there is a security argument here in that if people work out how to bypass Touch ID because it ties into credit cards, that's a big worry. I think there is an argument to be said there. The way Apple's handled it, perhaps not so great. And I mean, at the same time, they're involved in this whole privacy battle with the US government, and that's one that could spread to other slightly less privacy-friendly governments as well.
So, Alex, as we speak, you're in Mobile World Congress in Barcelona. For those playing along at home, this is the furthest we've ever been apart whilst recording this show.
I'm so lonely.
What's going to be hot this week in Barcelona?
Well, aside from the temperature, and of course, Northern Hemisphere, it's not that warm, there's actually only, so far, because everything is still yet to really formally kick off, there's only a few things which really seem to be raising the temperature. We know Samsung's going to put out a new smartphone, the Galaxy S7 in effect. They might change the branding, but I really doubt it. And LG has been positively effusive in the way that it has leaked information about its upcoming G5 phone. But so far in terms of phone handsets, that seems to be about it. Huawei has something, but most people are tipping that to be a hybrid tablet kind of device. HTC doesn't seem to have anything. BlackBerry doesn't seem to have anything. Lenovo might have something, but We won't see that in Australia unless it's Moto branded. So there's this kind of shift towards the middle ground, which is not to say that other big things aren't going to happen at Mobile World Congress. But on the big phones front, where previously MWC's been, where every big phone brand, excluding Apple, tends to go to duke it out, yeah, there's perhaps a little bit less of that this year.
So when you say sort of going for that middle ground, you mean middle ground just as in smaller size handsets, or middle ground as in not $1,000 handsets?
Both. I suspect both.
Yeah.
The realistic costs of production being that actually the physical size of a handset probably doesn't relate so much to how much it actually costs both to produce
build,
and how much you can charge a consumer for it. But what's actually happening, I mean, this is broadly happening anyway, is those mid-range handsets. So as opposed to your $1,000 handsets, I'm talking here your $500 to maybe stretching up to $750, maybe $800 handsets, are actually really quite good for most users. It's a bit like buying a laptop. Most entry to mid-range laptops are fine for everything that most people want to do. If you've got very specific needs, then yes, a higher end is the device you need. In mobile phones, obviously, there's a bit more of a style play, so the premium devices are still the ones that look the nicest, that have the most styling, or perhaps go for thinner and thinner and thinner, although, as we've seen, that has a price to pay in terms of battery life.
No, don't even start me on thin yet.
But it's also very, very clear, of course, that that premium market is mega saturated. The folks who can afford the $1,000 handsets have them. Where do you go if you're a phone manufacturer after that? You go for the ones who can't afford that, and that's mid-range and that's budget. That it's no particular surprise that the week before MWC, Microsoft formally announced the Lumia 650, which is very much a budget mid-range handset. They're chasing that market, and seemingly without anything having formally launched, seemingly that's what everyone else is doing. It's kind of funny though, because they're doing it against this backdrop of this rumoured iPhone launch. And Apple never turns up at MWC. They're not planning to turn up to this one. But there's this theory that mid to late March, Apple will hold an event and they'll launch what's being dubbed the iPhone 5 SE, which is going to be a mid-range handset. So seemingly all these launches are being done in that kind of shadow, depending on how you perceive this market.
Did the 5C actually get anywhere, though? Because to me, it sort of seemed to miss the mark. Apple had a change of heart, post-Jobs, although there was still a bit of Jobs-in influence in it. To me, the real game changer was the iPad mini. After telling people for years there's one size fits all, suck it if you don't like it, there's something wrong with you, Apple went, hey, all these people like 7-inch Android tablets, maybe we should give them what they want. And bam, that thing was a huge hit. I don't think the 5C really did as well, did it?
I agree the 5C was not a knockout blow, but I think the 5C was both, in some ways, a little bit mismarketed, but also a little bit misunderstood in terms of what Apple was actually trying to do with that device. At that point in time, and I can't speak wholly for their future plans, because every time I try and sneak into Cupertino, they set the dogs on me. But that being said, the 5C was their play to have a $0 phone for the US market. It was not exclusively their play, even though people wanted it to be, to have a fully mid-range, mid-priced phone.
Do you think that's what they're going to try and do this time, though?
Might be. Yeah, the 5SE might play that way. Very hard to say at this point. Clearly, though, based on what's coming up at Mobile World Congress, it's going to have a lot of competition on its plate. And frankly, it already does. The price of Android handsets tumbles so quickly after launch, such that last year's premium is this year's mid-range. So Adam, I got off the plane and checked my mail and discovered that the Australian three strikes policy is apparently dead now. I mean, what's going on?
Yeah, we were a tad surprised ourselves. The idea's been there for a while, but nobody's been able to agree on who's going to pay for it. The content industry seems to think that everyone else will happily foot the bill to help protect their content. So God
forbid that they should have to pay to protect their own content.
Yes, God forbid that they should do their own dirty work. So Graham Burke, who is the head of Village Roadshow, was
you forgot the word outspoken there. If you mentioned Graham Burke, it's pretty important to say outspoken at the
pretty much needs to be in there. And he was out speaking again and said, oh yeah, that three strikes thing has pretty much been shelved because we can't agree on who's going to pay for it. Which came as a surprise to everyone else in the industry who went, yeah, that's kind of right, but we didn't actually agree on saying that. But yeah, Mr. Outspoken got in and said it, and they all went, yeah, okay, fair enough. So they put all this effort into arguing for this thing, lobbying the politicians, forcing the government to say, if the industry doesn't sit down and make a code, we will write one for you, right? So they went through all that, got their code, now they're quibbling over money, and they've basically pissed the whole thing away. You really have to wonder what's going through these people's heads.
Do you reckon, though, that it's a reaction to the fact that Dallas Buyers Club withdrew? Because they spent a lot of money chasing to try and do the whole speculative invoicing route. And I've got no doubt, if they'd succeeded, then Village Roadshow and their ilk would have followed in their wake quite happily. With them withdrawing, is it a case of them then tipping up the table and saying, right, well, if we can't have that, we can't have anything? Yeah.
Well, yeah, but that's just stupid, which of course, I mean, stupid is their modus operandi, right? It's their signature move. But that's just stupid. The reason why Dallas Buyers Club failed is not because the judge said, no, you're wrong, you can't have these details. The judge was happy to put the wheels in motion to dob in these pirates. But the judge just said, look, I think you guys might be jerks. I've just got a suspicion that you're jerks. And when you get somebody's name, you're going to say, hey, you better cough up 10 grand now or we'll drag you through the courts. So to make sure that doesn't happen, I'm going to make you pay a deposit of however much it was. And if you behave yourself and do the right thing, you'll get your money back. But if you're jerks, you won't. And they went, what if you just give us a few people's names and we give you a little bit of money? And the judge is like, so you're not going to tell me you're not going to be jerks. So the judge threw it out. Not because there was any legal problem. Yeah, not because...
It was clearly an effort to not have jerk entered into Australian legal lexicon.
Exactly. So the Dallas Buyers Club people won and then threw it away. The Australian content people fighting for the 3 strikes policy won and then threw it away. At this point, they've shot themselves in both feet and they're still waving their gun in the air. It's just mind-numbing.
You'd think if you'd shot yourself in both feet, you'd fall over. But
you would think so.
Perhaps they are.
So now site blocking is their big thing. Again, this legislation's been there since the middle of last year, that they can go to the courts and say, you know, the Pirate Bay is letting people download stuff that belongs to us, please block it. Now,
see, at least with the Pirate Bay, though, people had heard of the Pirate Bay.
Yes.
With Solar Movie, I'll put my hand in the air and say, look, I'd never heard of them. I think it's fair to say a fairly large quantity of people have probably never heard of them. Are they just picking on the little guy to prove a point, to be able to say, right, this is how this is going to work, now everybody else obey the rules?
Yeah, exactly. That is straight out of the Copyright Police playbook. That's what they do every time. Pick on somebody little who you think won't fight back, set the precedent, and then go after the big guys.
Is it just a question then, as it always seems to revolve back to, of content availability?
Well, that's what everybody's been telling them. But no, they know better. People have been saying for a long time, piracy is primarily about availability and fair pricing. And you would think at this point it would perhaps offer them the opportunity to sit back and go, you know what? Maybe we've been approaching this the wrong way, because there are so many other ways to go about this, but they won't. They're too stubborn. They will keep throwing their money at lawyers. They will keep putting their efforts into all this stuff and then throwing it all away, and then wonder why they become less and less relevant. Because if all they've got to rely on is site blocking, that's a joke, because, you know, kids already know how to bypass that stuff. And, you know, primary school kids get into Facebook at school using the same tools that they'll beat to beat this. So if that's all they've got, they're screwed. They're screwed. If that's all they've got, they are screwed. They really need to say, right, this is not working. Maybe we should turn around and actually try and repair our relationship with our customers.
And adapt the business model. Absolutely.
No, that's too hard. And the same with the politicians. Rather than stand up to Hollywood and say, hey, maybe you should give Australians a better deal. That's too hard. It's easy to just go, oh, Australians bad, Hollywood good, you know, do the right thing. So I really have no sympathy for them, because they've done everything they can to screw this up for themselves.
Well, that just about wraps it up for this episode of Vertical Hold. Remember, if you've got any comments, hit us up in the comments section on YouTube, via Twitter, or the Facebook Vertical Hold page.
Thanks for joining us, and remember, if you like what you hear, hit that subscribe button.